Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Ebb and Glow podcast. Today, you are listening to episode 101 with Bianca Rhéaume. So I'm so thankful to have met Bianca. She heard of me and my podcast through mutual friends, and she reached out and wanted to get on the podcast and talk about her struggles that she's had. And I'm so happy that she did because I found the conversation to be super natural and genuine. I'm sure you'll be able to tell that through the episode, but I always love when I can have guests on that the connection is that mutually beneficial and, like I said, natural and genuine. So to give you some insight into who my guest Bianca is, so Bianca Rhéaume grew up in Quebec City and lived in Montreal where she started her career in fashion. She then moved to Toronto to be with her then boyfriend but now fiance and continued to build her career in fashion. After her experience working in an incredibly toxic workplace, at the age of 24, Bianca decided to start her own business as a freelance content strategist and creator. And now a few years since then, she has come on to the podcast to tell the tale of crazy toxic workplaces. And you can tell from her story that if you just take the time to understand that the situation that you're in is temporary and it doesn't have to be like this forever, and if you're able to get the confidence and courage to make the change, then you can change your life into whatever you want it to be. So in this episode, we talk about Bianca's ebbs, having fear of showing up live on Instagram. We talk about imposter syndrome. Of course, the biggest topic we talk about is toxic workplaces and being micromanaged. And because of that micromanaging and being in a very toxic workplace, she found that she was losing her self-confidence and her self-worth, and then that led her to self-sabotaging in other areas of her life. We also then talk about other ebbs of changing careers and moving cities, which will all add to kind of the time in your life where you feel that, what am I doing? What is this all for? This can't be it. And I definitely felt those themes in Bianca's story. But as always, whenever there's some ebbs in your life, it's not always going to be that way. So throughout Bianca's story, we definitely hear about her glows that she had. After that toxic workplace, Bianca finally got the courage to get out and start gaining her confidence and self-worth back. She worked for a bank for a little bit just to kind of get her confidence and competence back up. And eventually then she started her own business as a virtual assistant, and then that led into content creating and UGC. And she does say in this episode that she was a YouTuber for years, so being a content creator was nothing new to her. We also learned from Bianca that through gaining her confidence back and making some changes in her life, she had to learn to put her ego aside. And if you've ever experienced that before, it can be tough. You're constantly thinking about, well, what will others think about me if I make this change? And we always forget about what do we think about ourselves. And talking to Bianca about that, it was such a great reminder to only worry about how you are going to view yourself after this change. All in all, I know you will love this episode, and while you're listening, if you feel that you are in a toxic workplace, think about some of the stories that Bianca is sharing and make a decision for yourself. If you are in an uncomfortable workplace setting that you don't feel is very aligned for you, what are those steps that you can start taking to get out of that situation? And I hope you get the confidence and courage to do that. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode and enjoy. Bianca, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. So as always, I love to ask all of my guests, what's going on today? Tell me something in the past week or month that hasn't really gone the way you wanted it to go.
Well, the one instance that really stands out to me in the past week was pushing past my fear of Instagram lives. So last Friday, I wanted to go on Instagram Live because I have this brand new workshop that I just launched. It's like my first ever thing that I'm doing like in person. And I was launching the tickets on Friday. And so I told myself, I'm going to do an Instagram live. It'll be a really great way to kind of like give all the information that I need to give without having to like write it all out on a graphic and whatnot. And I'm always on video. I'm always in front of the camera. I have no problem whatsoever. But when it comes to Instagram lives, just the idea that anyone can go on it and like be there, it really like stressed me out. It's kind of like the same feeling when you're about to like jump in the water, or like when you're about to, if you're like a adrenaline junkie, if you're going like towards a parachute, or like you're jumping on a bungee jump. Anyways, that whole thing where you're like trying to go, should I go now? I don't know. So it was that type of process for probably like a good 30 minutes. And your brain tricks you like really, really fast. They're like, you don't have to do a live, like just like pre-record it and you could put it as like, a reel. But I said to myself, no, you told yourself you were going to do this. So I was able to do it. And it was basically just like a presentation, but, kind of doing it as a live. So it's always less scary when you're actually doing it. But right before, I was like really struggling. So that was my big thing from last week. And I'm pretty happy it went well, because now I can do a little bit more of them in the future.
It's funny that obviously you're a content creator now, so you're putting yourself out there at all times, but it's funny that almost pre-recorded content feels so different than hitting live and being here and now. It's funny how almost all your confidence goes out the window. You start questioning yourself all over again.
Exactly. And it's funny too, because I'm doing a workshop on like being confident in front of the camera. And so I was telling myself, Bianca, if you can't even do an Instagram live, like why would you be doing this workshop? Right. But it's just something new. So that whole idea of competence creates confidence. So if you're doing a specific thing for a long period of time, then yes, you feel comfortable in it. But then as soon as something new goes into the mix, you're like, oh my God, what is this? And it's the whole process all over again.
It's interesting that your first thought was, who am I to be teaching this if I can't even do it myself? But I think you and I and everyone listening knows that the absolute best teachers, professors, coaches are not the experts and someone who did it 5 years ago. It's the people that did it last week and only just got over the fear because it's so still new to them. You almost have the current wisdom to teach people to not be scared to go after something.
I completely agree. I've worked with coaches in the past, and like when looking at their content, I always resonate more with people who they really show that they're not a know-it-all, like that they're constantly learning and they're constantly changing, and something that they might have taught, a year ago is not something that they think anymore, and they're constantly reevaluating that. And I totally respect that. And I try to incorporate that into my business as well.
And it just goes to show you don't have to be an expert before you start sharing. I know some of the best content creators, and I always had to remind myself a lot where people want to see the journey. They don't want to see from 5 years from now, then one video clip of everything. They want to see the behind the scenes today. What's going wrong today? What are you excited about tomorrow? They don't want to hear about it 6 months later. They want to know about it when it's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know who said this recently, but on TikTok, I saw someone saying like, if you don't look at videos of you from like the past 5 years and you don't think it's cringe, maybe it's because you're cringe right now.
Ooh, that's funny.
I was like, that's a little feisty, but it is true. Like if you're looking at your past work and you're like, I could have done that better. It means that something's good is happening. You're growing and you're doing great changes.
And to add to that, the quote that I always heard that really propelled me to launch my podcast quick and just get stuff out there was, if you are not embarrassed by your first piece of work or first few posts or first few episodes, then you didn't launch fast enough. If you go back and you think your first episode is still as good as your 100th episode, there's something wrong there. You launched way too slow,
Yeah, totally.
Like I'm about to launch my third version of my cover art. And I've only been doing the podcast for 2 years and I'm already going with version 3. So like if I waited as long to get version 3, I'd only be starting this week, 2 years later.
So,
yeah.
you know,
and people don't mind. They don't mind the upgrades and the changes. They're even excited for you. They're like, oh my gosh, this is new. Oh, great. So yeah, totally.
I don't know if you feel this way, but I've been posting a lot more on TikTok lately, and I'm enjoying it a lot more than Instagram because of the less curated feel. And it's almost like just it's quantity over quality. And it's kind of a nice shift because I'm so used to Instagram being, oh, like it's not the exact kind of coloring and my feed doesn't look this way and cohesive. And I always found it exhausting. And then it would stop me from posting altogether. But I like TikTok more because of that lately.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually recently made a YouTube video about it, talking about the main differences between TikTok and Instagram Reels, because when it first got launched, there was a lot of differences between the creation process, but now it's pretty similar. So what I was saying that the two main differences between the two are number one, the algorithm, and number two, the type of content. So I totally agree that TikTok, the algorithm of this is much more sophisticated. I always feel like I'm watching the same things on Instagram, which is great for people who want a content batch and who are talking about the same things. But I just get shown the same type of content. Whereas on TikTok, it's very much quick on the trends, quick on the pulse, very funny, very messy, not curated. So when you're creating on TikTok or when you're doing TikTok, you got to be quicker on the trends, but it's totally worth it because you get exposure to so many more audiences for sure.
I just like the unfiltered vibe of TikTok that gives you permission to just show up as yourself. Like, I don't even feel inclined to add the enhance or retouch filter. When I do, I'm like, that doesn't even look like me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a nice
Absolutely.
feeling, especially coming from the Instagram world. I want to ask you a bit more about content creation, just because I come from the background of influencer marketing. So I worked at HelloFresh predominantly, and my entire job was building content creation and UGC and partnerships. So I know you do a lot of freelance content creation now. Do you do a lot of work for other brands?
Yeah. So I currently have 5 clients, and within those clients, they have their own clients as well. So I'm happy to say that I've been able to work with a lot of different brands from a lot of different industries. And so content creation is so different in every single industry. I've been in, the health and fitness space, the medical aesthetic space. I've been in the art space, the personal development space, and women in business. And those types of brands are just something that really resonate with me. And so I really love working with those brands. So I really had a great opportunity to do that. And now with UGC coming out and being super popular, a lot of people are dipping their toes into that. And so I find that super interesting as well. So hopefully going to be dipping my toes into UGC content creation in the future as well.
What part of UGC are you thinking, and what route are you going?
My route is really to take a look at the brands that I already use currently. So I have, some skincare brands that I really like. This candle that's next to me that I absolutely love. Those types of brands, especially brands that are maybe Canadian based as well. I have some superfood powders that I really love. So I'm just kind of curating a list of maybe some brands that I resonate with and I feel like it could be my style, and then start there. So that's kind of my point of action. It's not very anything specific industry related, but something that's just
sharing your
vibe.
life.
Yeah, exactly.
And for anyone listening who has no idea what we're talking about, UGC is user generated content. So Bianca, correct me if I'm wrong. You're looking at the products that you're already using right now and just creating content without getting paid for it today, right?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking of doing, because I feel like UGC is something that is very different, meaning that UGC is a different way of influencer marketing where you don't need to be an influencer to create this type of content. So what I'm thinking is kind of showing my already the work that I've already done, and then showing those brands kind of what I can do, and then selling those videos to them. Because sometimes it gets a little bit funky where you want to put it on your profile and then sell it to them afterwards. But I kind of want to see maybe which one works the best.
Mhm.
It's still a little bit of murky waters, but yes, I want to kind of use what I already have and what I've already done, and then pitch it to brands basically.
And then it comes from an angle of genuineness. Like you're looking at the brand being like, I've been buying your product for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to create content. I'm using it all the time. And it's easy for you as a content creator. If you're looking for content ideas, you're like, well, let's just videotape me using this protein powder right now, or using this foundation that I've used for so long. And I think brands, like I know when I was on the influencer marketing side, I would pick people that resembled the brand, but maybe they had no interest in using the brand. But I would have rather used someone that has been using the product for years and years. But if they didn't have a big following at the time, then there was no point to use them. So I love this new version and strategy of UGC that a lot of people are using on TikTok, Instagram, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen a lot of brands kind of splitting their budget and focusing maybe more on UGC now, because it's obviously a little bit more affordable for them, and it is just as impactful for them to go in the UGC route rather than the influencer route.
I want to totally segue, but also totally reverse and go backwards. I am not doing this in chronological order at all, but that keeps it interesting.
We're just having so much fun.
Yeah. With the type of role and running your own business now, you have so much control over your schedule. So what you do today and what you organize on your schedule and your calendar today, that's all up to you. However, a few years ago, that was absolutely not the case. Totally opposite. You say that you worked for a fashion industry in multiple agencies between Montreal and Toronto, and you, amongst lots of people, but you specifically had a lot of bad experiences with toxic workplaces.
Yeah. Should we go from the beginning?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to resonate right now. And what I think what people will find interesting about this conversation is I want people to, as we chat through this, to recognize, are you in a toxic workplace? Maybe you don't even know. Maybe you're so sucked into the day-to-day that you don't even recognize that the actions happening around you in terms of managers and coworkers and what's expected of you is even toxic, you know? And I'm sure you didn't realize it until it almost got too crazy.
Yeah, I had a sudden hit of realization, which we can talk about later. But yes, basically, when I graduated for a fashion marketing degree back in Quebec City, I started working in fashion right away. I was very nervous and, very timid. I started working when I was like 19, almost 20, and I was super timid, super nervous, but it was like exactly what I needed for my first job in Montreal. And they really took me in. It was a wholesale fashion brand. And I was able to go through basically all of the steps you need to create a fashion brand and to sell it to retailers. And so I was in the whole process. I was in the creation process, I was in the selling process, and I was in the marketing process as well. So I had total exposure to everything. And I really I couldn't have thought of a better way to like introduce myself to the fashion industry. It was a great way for me to start, but it also allowed me to see all of the deepest, darkest corners of the fashion industry. It's long been an industry where people are, on the verge of burnout. People overwork themselves, maybe over travel, or just their whole lives revolve around the fashion industry. Even though it still seemed as very glamorous and great, I was able to do really, really great travel while I was working in Montreal. I did pretty much all over the United States. I did New York, I did Las Vegas, I did trade shows in Atlanta, in Chicago. I met so many amazing people. Like, mind you, I was like 22. You know what I mean? Like, I was just still
and
a
traveling
little baby.
alone and running the show, really.
Traveling alone, running the show. And sales was really something that scared me a lot. And sales is something that I feel differently now. But sales was something that was really scary to me, and that I really had to get out of my comfort zone and, talk to complete strangers and try to convince them to buy this brand. So it was a really great experience, but I met my now fiance a couple of years back, and we were long distance. And so I decided to move to Toronto. And I think that was like red flag number one, is where I really just jumped at the first job that wanted me. Really, I was nervous. I was going to a brand new city. I wanted to make sure that I had my feet on the ground, that I had a job. So when I first got to Toronto, I started applying to a whole bunch of the same positions that I was in Montreal. And I found this fashion agency where this, instead of being on the brand side, if people are in the fashion industry, I was more on the sales side. So this agency had multiple brands that they were selling to retailers, whereas in Montreal, I was specifically focused on one brand that I was selling to. So this fashion agency was, a very great, and it was like a family oriented business. Like I was like, oh my gosh, these are like, they're such cool girls. They're all like kind of my age, it's going to be a great time. But this job in particular was strictly sales, something that I was the most uncomfortable about. So that was like the number one thing where I was like, I'll make it work, I'll figure it out. So I was there for about 7 months, and it went from the best thing ever that I was able to go into the fashion industry again in Toronto to a place where I didn't even recognize myself anymore. I was completely depleted and couldn't even find my confidence or my inner strength to stand up for myself. There was just like so many times where I was like, that shouldn't have been said, I should have said something, but I didn't know what to say, like you're kind of shocked when people are like, you're not doing enough. And I'm like, well, I'm here from 7 till 8, 7 a.m. till 8 p.m.
Your entire life.
Exactly.
I'm eating every meal there.
I'm eating every meal there. We don't take breaks. And I put this on TikTok too. I was like, the only time where I got to take a break and go outside was to take their dog out to take a shit. Like that was,
there's so much wrong with that.
Yeah. Like the work-life balance, it was one thing, but also what really stood out to me as well was the fact that they didn't want us to be friends. So it was, a group of girls, kind of all the same age, and they wanted us isolated. Now that I'm, thinking back at it, you don't realize that it's happening, but it is. I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I was giving rides to some of the girls to the office. They were like, we don't want you to give rides to for the girls to the office anymore. Like they didn't want us to be friends. They wanted us to feel isolated and alone, and so that we could be easily manipulated.
That's a cult, Bianca. That's not a company. That's a cult.
Exactly. It's those
but when you're
tactics.
in it, you don't question that this is weird. It's not until you're outside of it and starting to tell people about your experiences that everyone's like, that is not normal. But you're in it day in, day out. You just assume everyone else is experiencing the same thing. And especially at the age of 22, 23, you don't know anything. You don't know any better. You don't want to take any risk of pissing anyone off or burning any bridges, especially because at that time you want it to be working in this industry. So if you don't people please in this role, that might stifle you from getting to the next role. So you just put up with everything.
Yeah. And it's that wave of uncertainty of like, if I say something or if I stand up to myself, like you're saying, it'll burn bridges and it'll ruin and affect the rest of my career in some way, shape, or form. So it was those types of instances where I was thinking, I don't know what to do in this case. So yeah, those were kind of like the main things. And then what a lot of people kind of miss if they're in a toxic workplace is that if you're being micromanaged, first of all, they really lose money. If you're being micromanaged, it's so dumb. You're basically useless because they're just paying for double the work. But if you're being micromanaged, and I had someone at the office when I was there, that was like right before I left, it was right before the holidays. And they're like, you can't do that all by yourself. You need to give it to someone who knows what they're doing. Like straight out.
And you've been working there for like 5-6 months at the time.
Yeah. They're like, you need to give it to someone who knows what they're doing. I can't believe
what
that
was
you
the
did
task?
I think it was like putting out a collection on our internal database so that, that when we were out on the showroom, like, selling, and we had our iPads and we can just easily click all the collections. It wasn't even something that clients saw. It was just uploading a collection onto the database. And instead of asking someone to check it over, I just sent it through and everything was fine. There was no mistakes on it, but I still got reprimanded for the fact that I didn't get someone else to check it.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
That micromanaging and that fear starts from the top though. So if your boss is treating you like that, then her boss is treating her like that, and so on and so on and so on. That culture is brewed from the top. Yeah. And did you sense that when you were there?
Yeah. So it was like a family run business. So it was, like it was the parents and then the daughters, and then they, hired a whole bunch of people around them. So if the parents are like that, the daughters become like that. And then if the daughters become like that, then the other employees are kind of, they're kind of trying to protect themselves and protect their own cards. And so they act in the same way, which is, completely normal when you're in that sort of situation.
Give me another example of when you were micromanaged.
I was, because I was micromanaged so much, I got a lot of stress of just doing the basic minimum. So let alone even trying to sell, I couldn't sell to a client by myself. And so
what's the point of you, right?
Exactly. And so the fact that I couldn't do it by myself, it told my brain, I can't do this. So then I would fumble, I would mess up, and then I totally lost confidence in even selling at all. So it would slowly go down to, okay, she's not going to sell. We're going to, make her take off the clothes off the hanger and put it back on the hanger for a separate section. Just the basic stuff. Like that's all of my brain could do was the basic stuff, because my brain told myself, I can't do any of this. Like, I'm not good enough for this. Just give me all of like the most basic things to do. And even then they'd have to check my work of like making sure that all the clothes were hung properly, or like, the sales section looked good, or all of that, very simple things.
It's so sad when companies hire such great talent for a position and then shred them of every bit of confidence and skill set throughout their time at that company. And then they leave that company with a lot of resentment and with no confidence or self-worth left. And it's horrible. And I see it time and time again.
Yeah.
Why do you think that happens though? Like, why are they so scared of you doing your actual job you get hired for? Why is there so much fear that breeds the micromanaging? Like, what do you think from that specific company that you worked at?
Yeah. Well, I think in my case, I feel like, and this is not obviously the way to do things, but because it was a family run business, they held it so close to their hearts, meaning that like they needed to make sure that the numbers, the sales numbers were met. They needed to make sure that they were making this amount of money so that they can do this, and that. So I just felt like maybe they were just holding on too hard, and that's what they thought was needed. When in fact, if they just let people do the mistake once, then it would have probably made them, it would have probably made them more sales. If I wasn't so berated over small little things, I probably would have made more sales for them in 100%. Reality.
Is that company still around?
I think so. I don't really check in anymore. That's something that I was like, I told you too, that like, I don't have that company on my LinkedIn. I don't have them on my resume. I just like made peace with it and told myself I didn't want them as references anyway. So I, check in once in a while. I have made friends from that company, and we're still friends now, even though they tried to not like make us, chummy. So I still have friends there, and they have also left. So, it got even worse when I was there, like when I left, apparently. So they all went on to bigger and better things, which I'm super happy for them about. But it's great to connect with them afterwards, because we have this shared trauma.
Trauma bond, as one would call it.
Exactly. Trauma bonding. That's exactly what we did. We'd have little wine and pizza nights and trauma bonded.
It just boggles my mind how companies operate this way. I want to chat a little bit more about how you girls weren't allowed to be friends. Like, did they explicitly say that, or was there just ways in how they acted that made you almost scared to be friends with each other?
It was really, like I said, when I left is when I realized, oh, they've been trying to do this entire time, like trying to not make us so close to each other.
How though?
Well, when
because my previous companies, it's some of my best friends from that company. Like I just went to a girl's wedding that I met at that company. So I can't even imagine how someone would try to stop coworkers from being friends.
Yeah.
It was like a cult, like I said.
Totally. We were there, long hours. I would get there at like 7 a.m. and we would stay there until 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. And we didn't have any instances where we could actually talk to each other. We didn't have any lunch times. We didn't have any breaks.
Oh my God.
We didn't have that opportunity to talk about something other than work. So I kind of thought that it was just like a normal thing. Like, like they're my coworkers, we talk about work, we talk about these types of things. And so when I gave my 2 weeks notice and I just so happened to have moved really close by to two of my coworkers in my last 2 weeks, I was like, let's just get in the car together and
let's celebrate my quitting.
Exactly. Let's just go to work together and let's just celebrate. And we would carpool for most of the time that I was there for my last 2 weeks. And the bosses basically said to my two coworkers that they can't get on with me anymore. Like they can't like catch a ride with me. And they're like, well, it's a free ride. And are you ready to pay for my subway? Like that you don't want me to have this free ride? Like it was just like really weird. And I was like, oh, okay, I see. They don't want the other coworkers to get ideas of why I left. Yeah. Ideas of why I left or why I don't want to be at this company anymore or whatever, even though like my coworkers knew all the terrible things that were happening. Of course,
they're working there too.
Exactly.
Not dumb.
So it was just like a weird ask, and they didn't say anything to me because I was leaving. So they were like, we don't care about her, but they were just telling them that I couldn't hang out with them anymore. So
that is,
I was like, I see.
To me.
Yeah.
Obviously you're living with your partner at this time, right? That you moved to Toronto for?
Yes, I was.
Is any of that stress being brought home and affecting your relationship at all? Or is he pointing out like how you've changed or anything like that?
Yes. When we first moved to Toronto, he was in between apartments and I was just moving in and I needed to get my feet like firmly on the ground. And so we moved in with his parents. So we had, his mom and dad and Colton. Every time I got home, they would see how defeated I was. And, probably like 5 months in, my fiance's mom was like, you need to do something about this. Like, this is like not normal. Right. And so I was like, no, it's fine. This is the fashion industry.
It's Toronto. This is the way it is.
Exactly. I got used to certain things in the fashion industry. I know, I wasn't immune to it. I know things were happening or like people were talking about other people, but I didn't see it. But I really had like these self-destructive, like behavioral things that would happen to me. Like, for example, I'm not a smoker whatsoever. The fashion industry, they're very much all smokers. I think probably in the past, everyone smoked.
Why? Is because you don't have time to eat. So it just cures your hunger probably.
Well, yes, it would cure your hunger. Yeah. And it would also give you an excuse to go outside and have a break.
Yeah.
That's literally, exactly. That's literally why people smoked. And when I worked in Montreal, I wasn't smoking whatsoever, but I would go out with the smokers because it would give me an excuse to be outside, get a little bit of vitamin D, all that good stuff. So I wouldn't smoke, but I would just like hang out with the smokers. But when I moved to Montreal, it was like the peak Juul vape sort of time. So It was the only time where I felt like I had control over something. And so I would self-sabotage myself and like just start drinking or like smoking or like, smoking vapes. I would start juuling at 7 o'clock in the morning before going to work. And that's when I've caught myself and I was like, Bianca, this isn't you. Like, you don't do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just self-sabotaging yourself. And this is the only way that you think that you have control over something. You're like, screw everyone. I'm going to be like juuling at 7 a.m. when in fact, it only hurts you.
Yeah.
Right. So that was
me. Like, yeah. Getting to know you a little bit now, I'm like, I cannot picture you juuling at 7 a.m. on the way to work. No. Like, that's crazy to me.
I am not that person at all. So yeah, it was a time.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back that you were like, fuck this place, I'm quitting? And I'm surprised you even gave 2 weeks notice, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. But
at the time I've given notice to a role, I regretted it. Should just walk out.
At the time, I didn't want to burn bridges. I still haven't technically burned bridges. I think Good. Now, years later, if they ever hear this, maybe that'll be the bridge that burned.
Whatever.
But I didn't want to burn bridges. I feel like it was right before the holidays. I obviously gave myself time to think about it during the holidays, but right after the holidays, I gave my 2 weeks notice. Before the holidays, it was just like things piled up one after the other of being berated for dumb stuff or being told that I couldn't do this without someone checking up on me. Or I would just spend, like, near the end, I would just spend my days doing useless stuff, like putting clothes on hangers and
just pass the time.
Just to pass the time. So that's kind of,
you were just at your wit's end, essentially. And you were like, right. You realize I'm smarter than this. I'm meant for more than this. I have to get out of here. This is not a healthy environment for me at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously you left. So what year did you quit that job?
Oh, shoot. I don't remember.
You really blacked it out of your memory.
I blacked out.
That's good.
I think it was 2018 or like end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And then I started working a bank job right afterwards.
Okay. And then when did you start building and getting the idea for your own business and wanting to go out on your own?
So that happened during the pandemic. I've always wanted to be a content creator. I've done YouTube for years now, like ever since I was a teenager in my high school bedroom, like just chilling, doing YouTube videos. It was really during the pandemic. I was at my bank job for about 2 years and we were doing, obviously, like everyone else, full-time from home. And I really missed the creative aspect of the fashion industry. I missed being creative. So I just decided that I wanted to do something on the side. And I found this really great TikTok that was talking about virtual assisting. Cool. And how you don't really need a lot of funding to start it up. You really just need yourself, your personality, and what you can bring to the table. And so that's what I did. I started as a virtual assistant in 2020, and I was doing it on the side.
What type of work were you doing?
I was doing a lot of things that like I already knew. So I worked with a jewelry company and I did a lot of product descriptions for their Shopify. I met some of my clients that I'm still clients with now. And we did a lot of social media posts, and I was working on my copywriting and I was working on creating graphics. Again, I was like not as great as I am now. And I still feel like
you got to start somewhere.
But you got to start somewhere. So I was doing a lot of design and graphics, and I was helping out with presentation slides. One of my first clients was a health coach. So we did a lot of different things to get some new clients for her. So yeah.
Very cool. And what does your business look like now? Like, what are you mainly focused on?
Beforehand, I was kind of saying yes to every type of task. And now it's really more honed in on content creation and content strategy. Very cool. Now instead of my client kind of telling me what they need, we kind of work together now to create the content calendar for them, whether that be on their social media or their newsletter or their blogs. So we kind of look at it as a big umbrella.
Mhm.
And we look at month to month on what we should be focusing on, what should we be working on, and just giving like content ideas and creating that content for them on a regular basis. So
What
yeah.
type of clients do you have? Are they mostly brands? Are they individual, like entrepreneurs, solopreneurs? Who's your favorite type of an ideal client?
I have a good variety of clients. I have some solopreneurs that are in the health and wellness space, and I have some people who have like their own agency or their own marketing agency. So that's where the other clients come in. I have a client who has a full like branding and marketing agency, and we do a lot of different things together, but I focus mainly on social with that branding agency, whereas they offer, web development and they offer branding and all of that good stuff. But for anyone who's interested in social, I kind of hop in and help.
Very cool. I'm surprised you don't work with a lot of real estate agents. I feel like most of them need a lot of help.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm definitely open to it.
Yeah.
My mother is also a real estate agent. She's like, cool. I think I should hire you for my services. I was
in
like,
Montreal or in
Mom.
Quebec?
In Quebec, yeah.
Very cool. She's doing it for her whole career?
She actually did a career switch in her 40s. She was a hairdresser.
Cool.
And then decided to go into real estate, which I was like, you go.
I bet she's absolutely killing it, hey?
She's killing it. Absolutely.
I love that. I want to ask you a little bit about just like the self-doubt and low self-esteem, because if you're coming from an environment that is really crushing all of your confidence and competence as well, how do you build yourself back up enough to even start your own business? Because if someone left the 9-to-5 world with nothing wrong, they just wanted to make a switch, it would take a lot of confidence and courage to build them up and start their own business. But you went from literally ground zero up to start your own business. So like, where do you build your confidence in between and how?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I did really felt like as soon as I put those 2 weeks in that fashion industry, I felt like I really had to push the reset button and start from zero and not be in the fashion industry for a little bit. So when I decided that I wanted to go to just like an administrative assistant bank job, I was a little nervous even sharing it with people, because I felt like I had failed or I had, done something wrong, because it was really fun telling people that I worked in the fashion industry, and like people's eyes lit up and they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool what you did, blah, blah, blah. So I felt like my ego was a little bit hurt, telling them that I left to, and not knocking on anyone who works at a bank job. That is like the only reason why I got my confidence to where it was because I worked with people that were absolutely incredible, that I couldn't have done it really on my own. But the first thing that I had to do was put my ego aside and just learn how to be a good employee and learn how to be a leader again. So it was back to ground zero. And I started as an administrative assistant at the bank, and they, from day one, just let me run free and let me do what I needed. And it was the total opposite of micromanaging. And they're like, this is what you need to do. And if you have any other ideas of what should be done, or, what we can do to make things better, please let us know. And was
that shocking to you?
I was shook. I was totally shook. I was like, what, really? You don't want me to like send it to you before I send this out to someone? They're like, no.
This is why I keep saying the company you're at is a cult, because you question if you're good at anything anymore. You've been stripped of every bit of your skill set, that when someone is nice to you and allows you to actually do good work, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You had to reprogram your brain.
I had to reprogram my brain, and thank God my boss was just fantastic. He was there every step of the way. And there really is no better way to get someone's confidence back up than to let them do what they have to do. If they make a mistake, it's lesson learned. But if they do really well, to celebrate that and say how great of an accomplishment it was. And thank you so much for doing this. It was like night and day, just having the recognition towards something that you did that was really, really great. I was like, oh, okay, I can do something else. And then it's the next step and the next step. And you kind of go up levels. And by the end of it, I was kind of a leader in that department because I was able to, run like a French class. I was like, oh, a lot of people needed French lessons. I ran like a French class. I did a lot of the communication. I did like a newsletter, lots of different ideas that I was like, I need to do something fun for the whole team that's like in a pandemic and they didn't really know what they wanted to do or where they wanted to go. So it was just really great. And it was step by step, it was little baby steps that got me to the person that I was and the confidence that I needed to then start my business.
It sounds like this company that you worked at really valued and they gave you an opportunity to grow and prosper, and they allowed you to run with whatever idea you had. Because the nice thing about, think about the two different types of companies. You have an established bank who gets leadership training, manager training, who has performance reviews, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. It's a very established company versus a family-run fashion agency. They're chalk and cheese. You could not give two different examples. And because that family, it's going to be like working for your own family. It's going to be toxic as hell. And there's not going to be any kind of strategies in place or performance in place or growth opportunities. It's just giving me nightmares.
HR who?
Yeah. Oh my God.
They don't know what HR means. What's HR?
They would never. To start concluding it, I want to just ask you what's coming up for you in your business, what's exciting you, what's happening for the rest of the year, and where do you want to take your business for the rest of the year?
Lots of exciting things for the new year. Like I mentioned before, I am trying to start UGC content creating, which will be really, really exciting. I also have a lot of really fun projects where I want to step into more of like a knowledge-based teaching role. So I have a workshop that's coming up on October 6th. It's called Content Camera Confidence. Wow. And it's a really great educational networking mini shoot, all wrap up into one in like a VIP experience here in Toronto at Amica Studio. And it's going to be fantastic.
I know that studio.
Yeah.
Very well known.
Yes. And Liz Salzman, my photographer and your photographer as well, is going to be there as well to help, with the photos. So it's going to be great. It's my first workshop. So I'm a little nervous. And if it doesn't work out, it's all good.
You do another one.
I'll do another one and I'll try again, but I'm really excited about this. And I'm really into that space of wanting to create resources. I also have a YouTube channel under my name, just Bianca Rhéaume. And I talk about just the process of being a business owner and being a creative and all of the things that I would have liked to have when I first started. I'm creating videos in that sort of vein. So anything about my process when creating content or all of like the business side of things, I like to share that on my YouTube channel. So I'm really excited to do that. And I'm going to be traveling a lot next year. So it'll be great to have the business and traveling and doing that at the same time, kind of navigating through that will be really, really fun.
Where are you traveling next year?
My fiance and I are going to be kind of just doing the digital nomad thing before we get married.
Love. When's your wedding date?
All the fun things. We're going to be getting married probably in 2024 in September. So we're doing a 2-year engagement, but I think it's going to be the perfect thing for us because it'll allow us to save a bit of money and do all the fun things that we want to do before we settle down and start, a family and all that fun stuff. So
even being a digital nomad, even for a year, that's going to save you so much money. Like getting out of Toronto for a year, it's shocking, but it will.
Definitely. So yeah, we're going to do probably around 6 months in Europe. So we'll do like 1 month in one place, another month, another place in another month. And we'll be just going around and see what's out there. So I'm really excited.
How to get married in Toronto. Leave Toronto, save money, come back, have a wedding in Toronto. The sad reality. 100%. The sad reality. Yeah. Last but not least, obviously you just plugged all your channels, so I won't ask you that again. Anyone listening today that is questioning whether or not they're in a toxic workplace, what advice do you have for them?
If they think that they're in a toxic workplace, chances are that they are.
And how do they get out?
Don't gaslight yourself. If you think that you are, then, validate your feelings and know that they're real, and have the courage to just jump and know that you'll fall back on your feet eventually. And everything, whether it's good or bad in your journey, will lead you to something that's even better. Whatever you think is going to be the end of it, it's not. And everything that you are learning and everything that you've gone through, it'll really give you the tools to get to where you want to be in the future.
Amen. Amen. Bianca, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. You've given everyone a reminder today that you are the creator of your own journey, and especially in terms of career. And if you don't like where you are and you feel like it's toxic, this is not the be all end all. You can get out and you can regain any confidence that's been shredded from you from your current experiences. So thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.